Travel along, Catholic pilgrims, for 1 year as we read through St. Faustina's diary. Join me, Amy Thomas, each day for a short reading out of the diary which brought us a deeper understanding of Christ's divine mercy. Hey there, Catholic pilgrims. It's day 66 of our readings from St. Faustina's diary. You know, I just realized that we have surpassed 2 months. And maybe I thought about that earlier, and maybe I said it out loud. I don't remember, but man, what an accomplishment! 2 months, over 2 months. I'm stoked for that. We only have 10 months left together. Can you believe that? So today we are going to be reading from Notebook 1, numbers 246 through 250. April 25th, 1933. Monthly permissions. To enter the chapel when I pass near it, to pray in my moments of leisure, to accept, give, or lend small things, to have a mid-morning and an afternoon snack. Sometimes I will not be able to take part in recreation. Sometimes I will not be able to take part in community exercises. Sometimes I will not be able to take part in evening and morning prayers. Sometimes to remain at work a little longer after 9, or to make my spiritual exercises after 9. To write down something or take notes when I have a free moment, to telephone, to go out of the house, to visit a church when I am in town, to enter other sisters' cells in case of need, to take a drink of water occasionally outside the prescribed times. Small mortifications. To recite the chaplet of the Divine Mercy with outstretched arms. On Saturday, to say 5 decades of the Rosary with outstretched arms. To sometimes recite a prayer while lying prostrate. On Thursdays, a holy hour. On Fridays, some great mortification for dying sinners. Jesus, friend of a lonely heart, you are my haven, you are my peace, you are my salvation. You are my serenity in moments of struggle and amidst an ocean of doubts. You are the bright ray that lights up the path of my life. You are everything to a lonely soul. You understand the soul even though it remains silent. You know our weaknesses, and like a good physician, you comfort and heal, sparing us sufferings, expert that you are. The words of the bishop respond, spoken at the ceremony of the taking of perpetual vows. Accept this candle as a sign of heavenly light and of burning love. While giving the ring, I betroth you to Jesus Christ, the Son of the Father Most High. May he keep you unblemished. Take this ring as a sign of the eternal covenant you are making with Christ, the spouse of virgins. May it be for you the ring of faith and the sign of the Holy Spirit, that you may be called the bride of Christ, and if you serve him faithfully, be crowned as such for all eternity. Jesus, I trust in you. I trust in the ocean of your mercy. You are a mother to me. This year, 1933, is for me an especially solemn year because in this Jubilee year of the Lord's Passion, I have taken my perpetual vows. I have joined my sacrifice in a special way to the sacrifice of the crucified Jesus, in order to thus become more pleasing to God. I do all things with Jesus, through Jesus, in Jesus. All right. So I'm going to talk about something kind of odd at first, and I'll get to my point here in just a second. So my dad has always been a bodybuilder, my dad and my uncles. And from my earliest memories, I would go to the gym with my dad. That was way back in the 80s when kids were allowed in gyms. And these gyms were like hardcore, just slinging iron around. And I would go there with my dad and my uncles, and I would watch them train their bodies because my uncles and my dad would compete in bodybuilding contests. And whenever it came time for a contest, my dad would instill this strict discipline on himself. Like he would eat barely any fat at all. It was like chicken breasts and broccoli, and he would drink egg yolks raw. It was so gross. I just wanted to gag every time I saw him do it. And he would have no sweets. He would train hard, and he was so disciplined. And, you know, as a kid growing up, I would watch my dad And I knew, for one, that physical fitness and taking care of your body was very important to my dad. I knew that was a big part of his life. And the second thing I noticed was my dad had the ability to be so disciplined when he wanted something. My dad is a pretty disciplined guy, and I always admired that about him. And what it taught me as a young kid was that if you want something, you must be disciplined. If you want to reap the benefits of something really, really good, you have to instill discipline. So I've witnessed my father through my whole life be super disciplined, and he imprinted that on me, I think. At least I hope. I feel like I'm a pretty disciplined person. There was a time in my life when I wasn't at all, but I often think back to my dad and watching him and seeing him struggle and sacrifice. He gave up a lot of things so that he could, compete at a high level. So what does this have to do with the spiritual life? Well, a lot of things. Discipline is such a good virtue, and so often it is lacking, especially in our day and age. And I'm sure it has throughout all the ages, but I notice it in our day and age, especially because we are at a time in human history when we have so many comforts and so many pleasures and so much dispensable money for entertainment that we don't have to be super disciplined because everything's just at our fingertips. We are such an instant gratification culture. It doesn't take any time for something to arrive on our doorstep when we order it. And we have credit cards, so we can just, buy whatever we want and we'll pay it off later, maybe. And if we want chocolate at any time of the day, we can have chocolate at any time of the day. There was a time in history when that wasn't true. I mean, my grandfather grew up in the Depression, and he would talk about how at Christmas time, if he got an orange in his stocking, that was just amazing. And I was sitting there as a little kid thinking, an orange? And that just sounded so weird to me. But we lack a lot of discipline. And you see it all over the place. People start resolutions and they can't hang on to them. And people start diets and they can't hang on to them. And people start, their way into a marriage and they can't be disciplined enough to hang in there. All kinds of things. We lack discipline because we don't want to sacrifice or suffer in the slightest in order to attain something. That's why there's all these quick fixes and, lose all this weight in no time at all. And that just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And so then we move to the next thing that seems like it might be a quick fix. So when I was reading through St. Faustina's, the first part of the readings today, where she's listed out the things that she allows herself, she has a very disciplined life. Now, she is a sister in a convent, and their lives are very disciplined. But if we want to have a really good relationship with God, we are going to have to be disciplined. And I know that sounds like it takes all the spontaneity or maybe the joy out of having a relationship with Christ. But the truth of it is that if you aren't disciplined in prayer, you're never going to talk to God, and your relationship with Him is never going to really flourish. If you're not talking to Him, how can you grow in your relationship with Him? And if we're not disciplined about getting up and going to Mass, pre-COVID, normal times, or even just tuning in online if we can't go to Mass, because of certain conditions, if we're not disciplined in doing that and we're not willing to, get out of bed and get ready and go, we're not going to receive the Eucharist. And we're not going to be fed. Our souls aren't going to be fed by what is going to sustain us and give us, graces. If we're not disciplined in going to confession, our souls are going to get more and more and more sunk in sin. And that's going to make it very difficult to have a good, in-touch relationship with God. We don't have to live our lives, necessarily like Sister Faustina. We don't have to, be that rigid because we're in the world and we have families and we have, jobs that we go to and all those different things. But, so often we will just sit around and hope that we have a good relationship with God. But we won't do anything to be disciplined about it. We won't do anything to put it as a priority in our life and say, I'm going to do this, this, and this. Even if it's getting up a little bit earlier in the morning so that we could have 5 minutes with Christ. Just 5 minutes. That takes discipline. You have to get up out of bed, set your alarm, go to a special place and pray, not in bed so you don't fall asleep, and go spend just a few minutes with God. And even with church, getting up, getting ready, not staying up until 3 or 4 in the morning on a Saturday so that you feel refreshed to go to church. There's all these little different things. But my dad taught me all those years ago, like I said at the beginning, is that if you want to reap the benefits of something, you have to be disciplined. And if we want to have a positive relationship with God, we have to be disciplined. We have to show up. We have to be willing to sacrifice some pleasures and some comforts and offer those to God and be disciplined and intentional about having a relationship with Him. Reading through her list, some of them I just kind of had to, smile a little bit, especially the last one of the permissions to take a drink of water occasionally outside the prescribed times. But she's being very intentional. And that's what I love about it. And Sister Faustina is undoubtedly close to God. She is very close to Christ. She's very disciplined. She goes to Mass every single day. Obviously, she has to, but she has listed out these things. So she's not always just giving in and indulging herself and, not being disciplined whatsoever. Because when we're not disciplined, all we're doing is focusing on those carnal pleasures. And then they become vices and sin enters our lives. And then God gets pushed out and, everything just kind of goes haywire. So I am a big proponent of discipline. Maybe it's because I grew up watching my father and I saw that in him, and it really inspired me because I saw him then go on to win competitions, and it always made me proud to know that he was willing to forego something in order to get something better. And I was always impressed by that. So, let's be disciplined in our Catholic faith. And our culture does not encourage discipline at all. But it's so rewarding. It truly is. And it will foster a deep and abiding relationship with Christ. So that's all for today, Catholic pilgrims. Be disciplined. That's my message. That's what I got out of the readings today. Maybe you totally got something different, but I don't know. Just reading through it, I was like, she's a disciplined lady. So I really respect that. So anyway, I will see you back here for day 67. And until then, Catholic pilgrims, live the faith boldly and travel well.